Seems like we were just kids. The way this life keeps moving, with all of its changes. The things used to be so simple, running around and climbing trees. So let another day pass you by without those kinds of memories. So live it up and let it be. Don't worry about tomorrow. You just wait and see. So take it slow and don't move too fast, because this life is just an hourglass. Campfire in the sand, in a moonlight lullaby. If you don't take them in now, you watch them slip into the night. You'll have your days of laughter, you'll have your days of pain. Some beginnings bring the sunshine, and some endings bring the rain. So live it up and let it be. Don't worry about tomorrow. You just wait and see. So take it slow and don't.
Good morning. Welcome to Revive with Julie Pearson. Thanks for tuning in and joining my show. Revive is a place where women can enter into and draw new strength and energy for your life today. All right, good morning. Welcome to Revive Podcast with Julie Pearson. This is a place where you are going to hear inspiring stories and testimonies of women who have been restored by God in some of the most difficult areas in their life. And the goal of this program is just to encourage you with words to renew your strength anytime and anywhere, because in today's world of technology, you can listen to an encouraging message anytime and anywhere. So I'm so glad that you've joined us here today. And Revive Podcast, we also are aired live on Facebook every Wednesday from 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. And so if you're joining us on Facebook right now, thank you so much for tuning in. And I just love to engage with my audience. So if you are a Facebook listener, do me a favor, say hello, give me a thumbs up, maybe make a comment, say how much you like my blouse today, or you know what, give me one of the best emojis you can ever give. So I just like to know who's out there listening live. And definitely, if you are listening live, this is a chance for you to interact, and this is a chance for you to ask our guest a question, maybe make a comment. I believe that maybe she can give away one of her boxes to what we always like to pick pick someone who has engaged with us on our show and give away a book or something. So if you are a live listener, we will give you away one of my guests, and she'll talk about it in a while, one of her ministry boxes called Loved and Blessed. So stay tuned and you'll hear more about that. But again, Revive Podcast, we are now on podcast, and we are not just on Facebook and online radio, but we are a podcast. So I want to encourage you all to download, go to iTunes or Podbean or Spotify, any of your favorite podcast platforms, and search in the search bar Revive Julie or Revive Julie Pearson, and you will see me come right up. And so just want to encourage you to add that to your library of podcasts, because again, this show is all about having stories of other women and how you can be encouraged and uplifted by the story of another woman. So thank you for helping me out as well and being a fan. And again, I'm new at this podcast thing, so any reviews, any likes, any shares would be wonderful. Beginners, it's always scary to begin things, right? But also there's another chance that you can engage with us today. If you are live, you can actually call in. You can call in and ask a question for our guests, make a comment. And if you are a brave soul and would like to call in today and make your voice known, please do so. That number is 712-775-7984, and you can push code 205492. All right, well, let's get to our show. I do want to introduce our speaker here in just a minute, but our theme for today is so good. I love it. Man, our guest has quite a story that she's going to share, and I believe this theme and this title of our show today really represents her story, which is encouragement in the broken dream. We are going to be talking about broken dreams, and that's hard to keep going. There's a lot of disappointment that comes with broken dreams. So our quote of the day, we always start our podcasts off with some sort of quote. I get busy on Google and I research a quote that I think would be a great start to the show. So here's one from David Berg. David says, "All the disappointments, the broken dreams, and the deep, dark experiences will soon be forgotten and blotted out like a bad dream. Thank God. And when that glorious dawn of heaven arrives." So that is all of our broken dreams are going to be blotted out when we get to heaven one day, right? And they seem like a bad dream. Broken dreams are a bad dreams, right? Nobody likes bad dreams. All right, so our guest today is Jamila Jackson, and let me get her bio up here really quick. Jamila is a woman with a heart for encouraging others. Although she has always wanted to be a mother, which was her dream, God has helped her overcome the depression and hopelessness that accompany her infertility by giving her a new area. She is the founder of loved+blessed, a community and monthly care package for women, and her message is one of hope that will inspire you to celebrate the joys and keep moving forward through the challenges of each day. Welcome, Jamila Jackson, to Revive Podcast.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we are so excited you are here today, too, and I'm so excited because I've recently been having a lot of my podcasts mobile, and it's so fun to have someone actually who lives in Southern California to be on the show. And I just want to make that quick announcement. If you're listening out there and you would like to share your story, I would love to get in contact with you. This is a great place to share your story and share what God has done. So if that is you who is listening and you're in Southern California, because I love to have in-house guests, email me at julie@juliepearson.org, and I will get you on the calendar.
Cool.
A little intermission there, right? So, Jamila, I'm excited, too, that you're here. When I read your story on your website, I mean, a mother, a woman who is a mom, I felt your pain.
Yeah.
I felt your pain. And so why don't you just give a little introduction of yourself and maybe why you're excited to be here?
Sure. Well, I'm super excited to be here, first of all, because I believe that everything that you're doing with Revival for Women truly is aligned with the same mission that I have with Loved and Blessed.
Yes.
I think that there's so many things that can be really discouraging for women today. And so I think being able to give that encouragement and hope and just renewal every single day is so important. And it's something that honestly we take for granted. And I know I took it for granted a lot before kind of ever starting this whole journey with Loved and Blessed.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we are gonna, I've got these pretty pink little boxes here, and we're gonna be talking about these pretty pink boxes here in just a minute. So, well, you are the founder of Loved and Blessed, and your tagline I love on your website of your ministry says that He's turned my misery into my ministry.
Yeah,
I love that. That pops. Please, give our audience just a really big, quick kind of overall picture about your story that was filled with a lot of misery and broken dreams.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting. A lot of times I talk to people and they ask, how I started out with this kind of, ministry and business. And I said, well, it wasn't really purposeful. It was one of those things that kind of came out of my own personal pain. And so I guess the short version of the story is that, I was working and really happy working in product development and design and, had just gotten married and was really, really excited about, us starting a family. And about 3 years into, being married, we said, okay, it's about time to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And
the fun part of
right,
marriage,
exactly,
right?
the fun part.
That's what the husband's like.
Right. Yes, we did enjoy the trying.
Yes.
Still trying.
Mm-hmm.
But, we started trying and, having fun. But then we realized, about a year and a half into trying officially that nothing was happening. And, I started to get a little nervous, but I had a lot of friends that said, just be patient. Sometimes it takes time. You never know. And so we went through kind of all of the motions and doctor's appointments and things like that and found out that my husband was fine. But that there were some issues with me physically that would cause it to be extremely, extremely unlikely that without a miracle that I would become pregnant naturally. And so, after a lot of prayer and talking to a lot of family friends and just trying to figure out, okay, what is our next step? Do we want to adopt? Do we want to, try other means? And so we ended up trying IVF. And, for anybody who's been through in vitro fertilization, that's a whole nother emotional journey, on its own. And so, that was actually really, really tough. And at the same time, we were super excited because in one of our attempts, we actually did get pregnant. And so I was pregnant for a precious 9 weeks and ended up having a miscarriage. And, that was really hard, too, because there's a lot that goes into that. But I guess I'll just say that, for me, that 9 weeks was still really special for me. And it's still something that makes me smile to think about, even through the pain of actually going through that miscarriage physically and emotionally. And so, I remember literally on the floor as the miscarriage was happening, just praying and asking God, what is your will? I just want your will, not mine. What's happening right now? Because I just knew as soon as the doctor initially told us that we were pregnant, I just knew that, our miracle had happened. And so,
your dream had come alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And so, being in that place of wait a minute, I thought, we had prayed about this and we really felt this is what we were supposed to do. And then having that kind of torn away was really hard. And so, out of that, again, long story short, but out of that is, I got into a season of where I just started praying and fasting because I really didn't understand what my life was supposed to be about if motherhood wasn't what God had for me. And that was a really hard realization to come to of kind of well, what if that isn't what is in his will? For me specifically. And so it was in that season that he literally deposited this idea of boxes of encouragement in my spirit. And it's the weirdest thing because people are like, that's really weird. And I'm like, yeah, it was very weird. That's just what popped into my brain was boxes of encouragement. And I didn't really know what that meant. But after praying about it for a few more days, I started to realize that a lot of the talents and gifts he had given me that I was using in the secular world could be used to actually create things to encourage women that had more eternal value. And so I started really small, just, sending boxes and making things and sending them to just people out of the blue and friends and family and just gifting them to people. And eventually it grew into a whole ministry and small business that it is now where we send boxes every single month. Women become members and we have an online community where they can really share what's going on in their hearts and the challenges that they're facing in all areas of life. And then we have videos and the boxes kind of go along with each month's theme. And so that's kind of where Loved and Blessed was born.
That is so awesome. And, I can just imagine there is probably a lot of women that you're touching because this is such a trend, I think, today is the infertility
Yeah.
issue. Like, that, and it's like, why, God? You know,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that you went through all of those emotions of this biggest dream that you had of being a mom.
Yeah.
And that was your, biggest area that you thought you would be fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was being a mom, and then it just it didn't happen. And
Yeah.
so, I could just imagine the thought and the emotions coming behind that. You saw light at the end of the tunnel. You saw that God kind of was like fulfilling this dream of
Yeah.
yours. How long did it take for you guys to get pregnant?
Let's see. We actually were pregnant on the first round of IVF.
Okay.
And then we tried 3 more times after that. But the first one was the only time that I got pregnant, and then I had miscarriage.
Miscarriage.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what was going in your mind during this stage as to, I'm sure that you became angry
Oh, yeah.
with God. Let's talk through that, because that is a real emotion that we all as women can relate to, that when things don't seem to go according to our dreams and plans and our wants and our desires, and it doesn't just happen once, but over and over and over again, and you don't see hope in the fruition of the dream. Anger is such a natural emotion. Share about kind of how that took light in your life.
Yeah. And it's I think for me, it took me a while to realize I was actually angry. My initial reaction, of course, was disappointment and depression, and I was just really upset. And I was questioning whether or not I heard God right, in those, did we make the right decision in even attempting IVF, because, and all of that. And it took me a while to realize that I was actually angry with God. I had gotten to a point where my study time was, my Bible study time in the mornings was focused on only the stories out of the Bible that were about infertility.
Hannah, Sarah.
Right? Exactly. Reading and rereading that just for, encouragement, all this stuff. And I kept saying, like, I don't understand. Like, you've put me through all of this, and now here's where I am. And especially when it got to the point of, we had, we decided to use all of our embryos because we didn't want to destroy anything. And even the ones that the doctor told us, these aren't going to work, we were like, we just put them in anyways. We just, that's what we're going to do. And so it was a really hopeless time for a few years, actually. And it took me a while to realize that I was really angry that my dream had been kind of taken away from me. I was angry that the people around me who were trying to encourage me, in some ways were actually making me feel worse. And it was it wasn't intentional. It was one of those things, and I think it's something that we do a lot of times as Christians, we pull out specific verses.
Yes.
Without context.
Absolutely.
And we divorce the verse from God's will, right? And so, the verses about God giving you the desires of your heart and things like that. And so those things were quoted to me a lot as encouragement from other Christian women who I respect and love. They weren't doing it, purposefully. But it got me into this place of being angry, even angrier, because I was kind of like, well, but I am, I'm a woman, I'm married, like God's will is for me to have children. We're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. And like all of these things in my head were kind of really building up. And so I had to actually look at where I was being selfish in my desire to be a mother, where I was so focused on that. And it had really become an idol in my life of where I was so focused on motherhood that I couldn't see anything else. And so I actually had to pray multiple times and ask forgiveness from God for me holding on to this anger that he didn't give me what I wanted, and asking him what he wanted instead.
That you brought up some good stuff there, because there are a lot of those verses in the Bible that says God gives you the desires of your heart. And when you are in the thick, in the mud of a dream not being broken, not coming to life, a situation, a circumstance being really, really hard, and then you hear these verses in the Bible, it is a natural reaction to go, I don't believe that. Like, how could that be written? How he's not giving the desires, and he still hasn't given the desires of your heart. So that is some tough emotions to wrestle with.
It is.
But I think you're absolutely right. In fact, you definitely. Well, let me ask you before we get to the whole idol thing.
Sure.
Is it okay to be angry with God?
Yeah.
because I think a lot of us as Christians,
Mm-hmm.
we get scared if we're angry with God, then he's going to put more of a curse on us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny. I actually talk to people about this a lot because, you know, in every situation, whether it's infertility or, you know, for some people, it's, you know, when their marriage falls apart or something happens to their child or there's a death in a family or, you know, even just with the world today, everything that's going on, like there's so many things that a lot of times we're angry with God about because we don't understand why he's letting it happen. But I laugh at myself because it's not okay to be angry with God, to answer your question, but it's normal. I think it's a natural thing that we all feel. But the question is, are we willing to actually acknowledge it? Because he already knows we're angry. And I think that's the part that I laugh about is like, God knows I'm mad. He knew I was mad before I realized I was mad at him. You know, I'm huffing and puffing and thinking I'm doing all these things, but I'm spending less and less time in prayer because I don't think that he's going to answer it, or I'm scared of the answer that he's going to give me, right? A lot of times we go to prayer assuming assuming the answer is going to be yes. But the answer sometimes is no, or sometimes it's wait, or sometimes it's yes, but in a different way than what you think it's going to be. And so, yeah, I think being angry with God is very normal. The bad part is when we don't actually acknowledge it and say, like, Lord, I'm angry with you. Please help me to understand what you're doing.
That's really good. I think it is, that's what's healthy about it. Acknowledging it and letting God know, I'm angry. And I've had to do that in my own life, just actually recently.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done. I'm angry at you. And, you know, sometimes I think it's okay to put an ultimatum out there.
Yeah.
Like, and I had to do that, like, recently, too. You know, just like, I need you to show me if I'm on the wrong path.
Yes. And
you know what? God is so faithful.
Yeah.
When we put those ultimatums in front of him, he does show us.
Yeah.
Through people or circumstance. But, you know, going back to this anger thing, too, you know, let's look at Jesus's life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there is such thing as a righteous anger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I mean, Jesus got to a place where he had a righteous anger in the temple. Over time. And so, you know, and a lot of times our anger is maybe an injustice that's kind of happening in the world, you know. And a righteous anger is good because that's when we begin to see God.
Yes.
Right? And so I could imagine that some of your anger was a righteous anger because you were at this place of, okay, this is not happening.
Right.
Show me why.
Right.
And it's not blaming.
Yeah.
But I think those are the good questions to really ask when we're through a time of broken dreams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if you think about Job, I think about Job a lot, and it's like, you know, there were so many things that he had like you're saying, in a sense, a right to be angry about to a certain extent, right? Like, I mean, his family dies, his livelihood is taken away, like he's sick and he's got, you know, diseases and like all of these things have happened to him. And at the same time, then God's like, but I created everything. Like, you don't think that I am in control, you know, like, and I think that humility is really what, for me, is one of the things that came out of my whole infertility journey, is that humility of realizing, like, okay, I have a right to be upset, you know, like it's normal that, you know, that I want to be a mother. It's not, it's not like some crazy dream. Like, it's a normal thing, you know, as a woman to want to be a mom. So it's okay for me to be upset. But at the same time, I have to realize that the world does not revolve around me. And so even though it feels like it does when you're in your own pain, there's so many other things that God has that he wants me to do that I know for a fact would not have happened if he had allowed me to actually have children when I wanted to. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but there's the humility in that of realizing, like, I'm actually, in some ways, as crazy as it sounds, grateful. That desire is still there, but I have more of a desire to do his will than to worry as much. I'm okay if he doesn't, you know, grant my wish to be a mother at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about, I think that's sometimes so true of why we kind of go through these periods of broken dreams is God's trying to take us to a humble place, and he does it differently in all of our lives, you know. So no matter what we're going through, a lot of it is to come down to this place of, you know, God's trying to show us that you know, he wants us to make sure that he's kind of the guide in our life and we're not led through our own selfish desires, right? So you talked about this, admitting that this desire of being a mother became an idol. How can a desire of motherhood be an idol?
I know. I say that sometimes and people are like, wait, what? Because we normally think of idols as, something that most people would shake their or would nod and say, that's a bad thing in your life. Yeah, that shouldn't, you shouldn't be idolizing that. I think for me, I realized that motherhood had taken over everything. My desire to be a mother had taken over everything. Like, like I said, my Bible, literally, there's probably, if I'm honest, there's probably like a year and a half, if not longer, where I probably did not study anything out of the Bible that didn't have to do with my own pain.
Yeah.
And not that Bible study's ever bad, but when it gets to the point where I'm searching for things to justify my pain or to make me feel better, and I'm not really trying to grow in my relationship, that's not a healthy thing, in my opinion. I got to the point where, I said I was initially, when this had all started, I was, working full time for another company and designing things, and I used to have to travel all around the world and work with factories and designers and manufacturers in different countries. And I would schedule my trips around when I was ovulating. I would, and to the detriment sometimes of other things. It had gotten to the point where, there was things in my marriage that were hard because that's where I was focused, was just on getting pregnant. I was working in an industry where we would develop a lot of things and a lot of products. And I had, before we ever even tried to, before I ever got married, I had boxes and boxes of baby clothes and samples that we had made for different companies that, I used to work in a company that we did baby apparel. So I had little onesies and little hats and little socks, saving all of these things. And so when we first got married, it was really funny. My husband, we're unpacking things. My husband was like, why do you have all of these boxes of baby clothes? Like, what?
Because when am I going to use them?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, But everything in my life revolved around wanting to get pregnant. As soon as we got married, it was like I stopped buying shoes because I had heard that people's shoe size changes when you get pregnant. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want, so I'm not going to buy any shoes. Like, just to the point of it being pretty ridiculous. And so, it really did become where my life revolved around that. And I think anytime your life begins to revolve around one thing and it's more about what you want and not, you do get in that selfish place, then I think anything, even good things, can become idols in your life.
Yeah. Yes, so true. I think sometimes when things become all too consuming, they become all too controlling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So I as hard as that is to look at motherhood as an idol, now I can see through your explanation that if you're just constantly consumed by this thought and this idea, and it was controlling you.
It was. Yeah.
And God spoke to me this morning, even on the way here, of like, Julie, once you let go of that, then it's going to start to happen. Yeah. But I'm so consumed by a thought right now and an issue. Yeah. And it's like, as soon as I stop being consumed by that, then it's going to happen. Yeah. And that, I think, it's going to happen in the way God wants it to happen, not the way I want it to happen. Yeah. But I think that is the whole lesson to be learned here, is that sometimes our broken dreams are a result of our idleness. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's some hard stuff to look at. Self-reflection right there. Right?
Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
And that's where God does his best work, though, because and we hear, our one thing I've been asking is, well, God, are my desires your desires? Right? And that's, I think God wants us to be in a place like that, asking those questions. God, I have this desire. Yeah. And that's something I've learned, too, is like, I have this desire, God, but I don't know if it's my desire or your desire. And what a great place to be, the humility that you were talking about, when we can come to that place of just complete, okay, not my will, but your will. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's freedom in that, isn't
There
there?
is.
Yeah, explain. Like, how have you been able to really feel freedom in that?
Yeah. I think for me, it's just what you said. It's like that letting go. And I think, as hard as it was to say, not my will, but yours, Lord, like, at the same time, it's interesting because, I do believe that God is fulfilling the desires of my heart, but he's pulling out different desires that I didn't know were there. And so, yes, that kind of all-encompassing obsession with becoming a mother is and was still a desire that I had, But at the same time, it's like that has gone to the point where, like I said, I'm okay. Because there was a point in my life where I felt like I wasn't going to be okay if that didn't
Right.
happen. And I really just felt lost. And
Like it defined you?
yeah,
Did
like
it-
what is my
yeah.
life
Yeah,
for
what's
if
my
I'm never going to be
purpose?
exactly
So
you know?
good. I think that's a big question women
Yeah.
ask all the time.
Absolutely, yeah, and especially with something as dear as motherhood. And I've
Yes.
talked to friends
Yes.
who also like are, beyond motherhood, who are just still in a singleness, phase and want to be married, and that's the desire of their heart. And I have a friend who's bought her wedding dress already. I won't mention her name, but and I was talking to her about like being careful
Yeah.
of that not becoming such an idol
All-consuming,
and
yeah.
all-consuming, because yes, it's a good thing, and yes, it's kind of a weird thing to talk about marriage as becoming an idol. But I know when I was in my mid to late 20s, I started to kind of freak out and had that same issue of like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get married?
Yeah.
But what if God has something else for us? And so he really does, he is able to really restore those broken dreams. But I think that we have to be willing to let go. And you don't have to completely let go, but at least open your hand.
Yeah,
I was holding on to
absolutely.
motherhood,
That's what it
right,
is.
and just clutching it.
Yeah, because it's not like you want to let go of that completely.
Exactly,
Yeah.
So it's like that dream is still there, but I had to actually open my hand and say, all right, Lord, if you want to take it out of my hand, you can. But also, if you want to put something else there,
That's
I'm
good.
open to that too.
What a wonderful illustration. Opening it enough to say, here, I'm giving it to you, and if there's something else you want from me, place it in my hand.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful visual right there.
Yeah. And I think that's, for me, that's what ended up, with this ministry. It's like I never would have, thought of this if I hadn't gone through that pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, yeah. So, why do you think, so we're still on the subject of kind of idols and God breaking us down in our idols, why does God seem to do his best work and his refining in the areas that maybe we've created the idols?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's because those are the places where he's going to really, really get at us. Like, I feel like there are a lot of little things looking back, right? 2020, hindsight's always easier to see certain things. And I can see certain things where, I remember being at my job and getting to the point where, I was getting promotions and raises and things, not because I was necessarily going after them, but they were just coming, because hopefully I was doing a good job. But it was interesting because I never felt like I really wanted them. And I remember it being weird talking to coworkers that would be super excited for me. And I was kind of like, yeah, it's great, and they're like, but aren't you excited? Like, this is happening. And I could never really explain why that was.
Wow.
And looking back on it now, I'm like, all right, Lord, I can see why you were kind of tempering that excitement in my heart, because you had something else for me, but I couldn't see it. And again, at that time, I was so focused on, becoming a mother that it was kind of like, okay, well, my job was amazing. The company I worked for was amazing. They had a great maternity leave, policy. And so I was really focused on that. And I think that God had to prick me in a place where he knew it was going to hurt the most, because he loves me. Not because he wanted to hurt me, but because without that, I would never have stopped. It's like he had to literally rip it away in order for me to stop and pay attention, because he had tried to do other things that it wasn't enough for me to stop and pay attention.
You know what? I love that you just kind of talked about that. So do you sometimes kind of go, okay, I'm not going to want to be a mother, because like what you were talking about related to your job versus motherhood, it's so true. It's like, oh my gosh, I can eat this hat because I see this so true in my own life. It's like the things that I want so bad in my life are the things that are the hardest to get, right? The things that we're like, that doesn't matter. It's easy.
Exactly.
It just becomes easy,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So what you need to do, Jamila, is just go,
Yep.
I don't like kids. I don't want kids. I don't.
And then the opposite will happen.
Well, they say, too, that a lot of women have so much trouble getting pregnant because they're just so stressed
and anxious about it.
And that's what's a big cause of infertility, too.
Yeah.
Man, our psyche and like the way God created us, he just knows us so well.
Yeah.
And it's just it's tough in those areas where we want so bad, and it doesn't allow us to be at ease.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't allow us to be at
Yeah.
ease, and it doesn't allow us to actually have a clear picture, I think, of what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, before we go to our break, let's tackle one more question. How would you kind of tackle this truth that God is in our broken dreams?
Yeah.
So how did you? I love the verse that you shared on your website,
Yeah.
Romans 12:12. How did you ultimately believe that God was becoming in your broken dreams?
Yeah. Well, I always loved that little, phrase that you see, choose joy, right? And, you see everybody, but I've always kind of questioned, okay, but how do you do that, right? Especially in a season where you are in a broken dream season, or, where you feel like a dream is starting to fall away and you're not sure what's happening. How do you continue to choose joy? Because it sounds great, but it's like, it's not practical necessarily in real life. And so for me, in that season of trying to figure out, like, what do you want me to do, Lord, if motherhood isn't what you have for me, Romans 12:12 was the scripture that really, really resonated with me.
You have it right there.
Yeah, actually, it's be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. And for me, that means that is how you choose joy, right? Is that no matter what's happening around you, if you're patient through the affliction, if you're patient through that trial and through that season, if you choose to focus on hope, that gives you joy. And if you're faithful in prayer throughout it, that's how you get through those seasons of affliction. So for me, that's super simple. I mean, it's like a super short verse, but that for me is how you choose joy. And that is, like I said, that for me, that's really the basis of everything that I try to do, is to help people to do that every single day, similar to what you're doing with Revival.
I know. I love that short and sweet verse. Be joyful. Let me read it again. We're going to read it again. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. The three key words: joyful, patient, and faithful. And that's the key. Is learn. That's the key to life. Learning how to be faithful in our affliction. Be faithful when God isn't, blessing us in the area that we so want to be blessed in. Be faithful with the. How hard though? Be faithful in the sickness. How do you be faithful in that sickness? It's man. Life is so hard. That's why heaven is going to be a glorious place someday. Right? We don't have to deal with all of these issues, right? But we all have it, and that's the thing about like what you're doing. I love your boxes of encouragement and ministries. It's like God knew that that we needed to have ministries like this on earth, because He knows how tough and how hard this earth, living this life is going to be, because sin entered the world. So it's an automatic, But gosh, having that eternal perspective, that hope of, someday I'm not going to do, this too will pass.
Yes, it will. It will,
right? But it's learning how to live in the midst of it.
Yes.
Well, let's take a quick break. Before we come back, we're going to take 30 seconds out to advertise our sponsor for Revive Podcast, which is Esther Rising. We are speaking with Jamila Jackson, founder of Loved and Blessed, and she's sharing her story about how she had a lot of misery in her dream of being a mother, but God created a ministry out of her misery. We'll be right back. Esther Rising is a sponsor for Revive Radio. She is the former wife of a National Football League player. Esther Rising is a member of Women of the NFL, and she resides in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Not All Roses is her first published book. It's a story of her journey of a high-profile, broken, abused, and troubled marriage to regaining her God-given identity and keeping it sacred for life. The lessons learned made her a teacher, a minister, an intercessor, and an advocate for marriages. It's Not All Roses is available on ZulonPress.com, Amazon.com, and Kindle websites. For dialogue and speaking engagements, you can contact Esther Rising on Facebook at Esther Rising, on Twitter at Where is Esther, or by phone at 615-418-1280. Alrighty, we are back in the studio with Jamila Jackson. Thank you to our sponsor, Esther Rising, for sponsoring Revive Podcast. Esther Rising, you are helping keep this podcast alive. Any of you who do want to sponsor, come onto our sponsorship program, please get in touch with me. I'd love to talk to you. Email me at julie@juliepearson.org. Well, I love all of the people on our Facebook feed right now who are live listening. Thank you so much. Kelly's watching. Kelly Dixon, John Nipper, Phyllis Davis. She wrote, "He never closed one door without opening another. Trust and believe," which is so, so true. Thank you, Phyllis, for that comment. And so for those of you who are listening right now on Facebook, please engage with us. Make a comment, ask a question. Jamila's going to give away one of her boxes today to someone who is in our live audience and engaging with us. So don't be shy. All right, so we are back with Jamila and talking about her story of just a broken dream of her not the dream of not being a mother fulfilled right now in her life. But one day I know that dream is going to come true for you. So why is it important, I guess, for us to recognize and acknowledge that God sees our misery in our broken dreams? And can you really say that right now, Jamila, as you processed your pain? And you know, it takes time to process our pain, right? Yeah. And it's still hard, I'm sure, when you see little babies out there and your heart just like, you know, that desire is so strong still. Yeah. But now you're at a place where maybe you're not mad and angry, but you're waiting patiently. Yeah. And so why is it important for us to get to this stage of acknowledging God's in this? God's in this misery of mine right now. Yeah. God's in this heartbreak of this broken dream of mine right now.
Well, and, you know, I think that for anybody who's experienced any sort of broken dream, like you said, there's always still that glimmer of hope, right? And that's, you know, again, we were just talking about Romans 12:12. Like, I think it's important to always have that hope because we have no idea what God's going to do next, right? We might think we know. We might think we have a plan. I'm a planner, too, so it makes it even harder when my plan doesn't work out quite right. But I think that the importance in recognizing that God is in our broken places is, honestly, that gives us hope, right? Because so if we don't recognize that God is in our pain as much as in our joys, then I think a lot of times we kind of steal the glory that he can get from what he's doing. So, you know, we were talking about humility and, you know, me realizing that out of my pain, other great things have been able to happen. And if I didn't recognize what he was trying to do and I kept fighting against it and just focusing on what I wanted, then there's so many other blessings that never would have happened. And honestly, I would have been stealing joy from somebody else, you know? And I think the more that we can recognize that there's a purpose in our pain, as hard as that is to accept, and it's hard to hear somebody tell you that when you're in it, cliche. Right? It is cliche, and at the same time, it's so true. But a lot of times I encourage people to actually look back over their lives, and it makes it a little easier to realize that even if I can't figure out what the purpose is right now, and even if I'm angry about it right now, I can probably think of 3 or 4 times in my life before where I've been that angry, where I felt like my dream, a different dream, you know, was broken or ripped away, where now looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I see what he was doing, you know, and I kind of laugh at myself like, all right, Lord, I'm going to trust you right now, even though I have no idea what you're doing right now. You figured out, you know, those other things had a purpose, even if the purpose wasn't about me and it was about somebody else. So I'm going to trust you even in this, even though I don't understand what's happening.
Wow. Yeah. And, you know, the verse that I kind of went to with this question too was 1 Peter 5:7, which is cast your cares upon him and he cares for you. Yeah. You know, so how can that verse really come alive to a woman who's listening right now? Yeah, right. God cares for me. Right. Like she's doubting that God, he sees you, he loves you, and he adores you. Yeah. He cares for you. What's your advice on how is that true?
Yeah. I think that, so, you know, again, just using my own personal story, for me, it's been a process of realizing that, and this is going to sound a little crazy, so hold on to your seat, but he used my miscarriage as a way to draw me closer to him. And I can see that now as him caring for me, because honestly, if I had had a child when we were, you know, initially trying, I really don't think my relationship with him would be as strong as it is now. And so in a weird way, he had to kind of cause that pain because he loves me and because he wanted me to be closer to him. And again, that's a really hard thing to accept. And it's hard because sometimes people look at that and say, oh, but that's not a good God. Like, why would God do that? But there's so many good things that still come out of those painful moments. And so, I think that when we do cast our cares on him, and when we do, like I was saying earlier, open our hands and just say, God, what do you want to put in my hands? You're taking something away from me, but what is it that you want to put in my hands? We're also in a position of having more gratitude for the things that he has given us. Because, I can look at my life and say, we don't have children right now, or, this is sort of TMI, but you'll probably find this funny. I had a panic a few months ago because I had some things going on with me physically, and I thought I was going into like early menopause. And so, of course, that brought up a whole nother thing of like, okay, well, when that hits, there's done. Really done, it's really done. And so, I had to re-deal with some of the things that I had kind of gotten past in accepting the status of my fertility at the moment. And but I realized that even in those moments, it's like he's drawing me closer and closer to him because he cares for me. And the strength that he's given me through this journey has made so many other things in my life bearable. And if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through, I wouldn't have the strength to handle some of those other things that have gone on in my life, because, infertility is just one of my testimonies. But like so many women, I have so many other testimonies, and men too. Like, we just have so many other testimonies of tough, broken things that have happened in our lives.
Yeah. And, I feel like that's the great divide, where some of us are able to kind of pull up our bootstraps and go, okay, I'm gonna trust that he still cares for me.
Yeah.
But there's the other side that's so sad, that there's a lot of, maybe there's been a lot of hurt in their life, and a lot of anger has built up, and so the immediate reaction is to just go, I can't trust that you care for me, God, and so we run away from God. And it's like, oh, if that is you out there today, I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe, what I would say is read a psalm. Read a psalm a day. Read something that's going to draw your heart closer and see a glimpse of him. I mean, that's the secret of life, is just figuring out, finding some sort of glimpse that he created you, and that he does care for you, even no matter how much hurt and pain. And I know it's, when people say that all the time, and I see women up there preaching and teaching, and I'm like, they've had so much success. How can they,
Right.
It's so easy to kind of categorize people when they say things like that. But
well, and I think that's why, one encouragement that I would give women, and I say this, and sometimes it takes a while to really get comfortable with it, but is to stop suffering in silence. And I think that's
good.
what...
Stop suffering in silence.
Yeah,
take that. That is for someone here today.
Yeah.
Stop suffering in silence. Good.
Because I think that for me, the biggest thing that I've learned out of my pain is that my transparency about it and my honesty about it actually brings me more encouragement. I tell people that all the time, like, you can't get encouragement if you don't tell anybody what's going on, and they don't even know that you need anything, like that you're in pain. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes we're scared to share our pain because we feel ashamed. There were, for me, I know in my struggles, like, there were a lot of kind of shame feelings that came along with it. And I think that, until I actually was okay with sharing, like, this is what I'm going through. This is how I feel about it. I am angry at God. I am feeling this way. I do regret, focusing so much, of these years, certain years of my life on trying to get pregnant. And while other things were going on around me that I just kind of blocked out because that's all I was focused on, like, being able to be honest about it, I get so much encouragement from that, because other women who have experienced that or have experienced other things but can relate, we can share our stories and encourage each other. And it's okay to say, like, I don't have the answer to why this is happening to you, but I do trust God, and I want to help you trust him too, even through this. And so we can pray together or talk to each other or just text each other a scripture or something funny to laugh or whatever. And so I would just encourage anyone who's listening who is going through something right now, whatever it is, that your transparency is actually your strength. And a lot of times we think of that as a weakness because we don't want to tell people what's going on. But I found so much strength in that. And of course, it's, I'm not advocating for you to post it all over social media necessarily, because I think some of us are a little too transparent. But I think finding, safe people and community around you where you can share those things and be met with encouragement and sometimes tough love. I had people who would look at me, and my husband, for one, who got to a point, even in our
my husband's the
IVF.
biggest tough love
person. Yeah.
Gives me that all the time.
Yeah. And that conversation of, my husband started with me of like, okay, if this, we are going to use these embryos, if this does not work, what are we doing? Because our life can't revolve around this. Not that we don't want to have children, but we're getting to a point where that's the focus. And so, that tough love was really hard to hear, but I needed it. And so I think having people in your life that can do that for you is actually really important. So that's what I would encourage, women to do, is to just be transparent.
You brought up this word shame, and I just have, I think I am so happy that God is using, have you heard of Brene Brown?
Yes, I love her.
She's like the shame expert, and she kind of initiated this, she was kind of the commissioner. We got to talk about our shame, because if we don't learn how to talk about it, we're just going to completely die. Right? And so, but it's interesting because some people, like when I hear your story, I'm like, no, I wouldn't feel like there's shame behind not being able to have a child, but for some women, that's a deep shame.
Oh,
and it's, our shame stems from a root of something.
Yes.
My
Absolutely.
shame is different. I mean, and my identity is my shame.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think that's the, and actually mine is related to my identity. I mean, I think for me, like I was saying, the, infertility was kind of the misery that Loved and Blessed came out of, but there's so much leading up to that, and we all have, so many different testimonies in our lives. I think, for me, I know we're on the radio. Some of you guys are watching live, but, I was a Black woman. I grew up in mostly predominantly white neighborhoods. And so that there was adjustments and challenges that came with that. I think, for me, getting married I was 30 when I got married, which these days isn't that old, but for a lot of us, by the time I hit 25, I was starting to freak out. So, for a lot of us women, that feels old. And so there were a lot of different things in my life that I had been made to feel ashamed about. I grew up in the South, and so I used to have a very weird Southern accent. That was kind of,
still hear it a little bit.
Yeah, it comes out every once in a while.
I hear it a little bit. I love the Southern accent.
I do too.
I love it.
But when we moved to California, I got made fun of for that. So, and I always felt very left out because I didn't really fit in with, my community. And then I also didn't necessarily fit in. Even, the churches that I grew up going to were usually predominantly Black churches. And so I didn't really I felt kind of left out there because I didn't really have the same life experiences that some of my friends. So I always felt, left out and not like I didn't fit in. And so there was a shame that went along with that. And then when infertility hit, it was interesting because it actually, even though those seem not related, it made me feel left out as a woman.
Because, I was just going to say, that whole feeling of being left out.
Exactly. And so, there were very well-meaning friends who I'm very, very close to and I love to death, but that didn't invite me to their baby showers during that time because they thought it was going to hurt my feelings. And I would find out about the baby shower later, and my feelings were worse because I felt ashamed. It's like, there were so many things that just compounded, and so it made me feel even more left out. And so it tapped into that identity that you were talking about of like, I've never felt like I quite fit in the right places, or like it was okay for me to just be me, my quirky self, and not fit into a certain category. And so then, not being a mother, and then also having a fairly successful career, the assumption was always made that that's why I wasn't a mother. People wouldn't ask. They would say like, oh, the first question people ask you, are you married? Do you have kids? And I would say I'm married. No, I don't have kids. And even now, I've been married for 14 years. And so there's like this silence when they say, do you have kids? And I'm like, oh no. And they're like, but haven't you been married for a long time? And I'm like, yeah.
That's the stigma.
So there's a lot of shame that comes up.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about adopting at all?
We have. And it's interesting because we've talked about adopting and fostering, and it was interesting. We talked about it in that season right after, we had tried IVF. Well, we mourned for a while.
Right.
And then we talked about that. And then it was in that season when this whole thing started with Loved and Blessed. And it's been crazy. My husband's also an entrepreneur, so it's been crazy. Kind of that's been our trajectory. And so at this point, we're still prayerful about it, but we just haven't quite felt like the timing, has been right. And I think that's an interesting thing that links back to the shame thing too, because there are times where I get into conversations and people, how do I put this? They kind of inadvertently make you feel bad for not adopting right away. As though, and it's a weird thing. It's a hard thing to talk about because I still feel like everything that we do has to be God-led. And I think that if we had initially jumped directly into adopting, which honestly I wanted to do pretty right away. I had brochures and was downloading stuff, and my husband was kind of like, okay, calm down. Like, we're still in this like acceptance phase before you jump right into the next thing. And so, I had started downloading brochures and all this stuff and was really like researching adoption. And it was interesting because that shame thing came up again when I started looking at like, oh, you have to do these interviews and write these things about why I would be a good parent and, all the whole process, which it's a great process. But as a person who's gone through infertility, then I started to question, well, if God didn't allow us to have a child naturally, am I supposed to have, be a mom at all, And then so that shame came up. So that's why I was saying it's a when I talk about it, it's a short, succinct kind of explanation, but there was so much that went into this journey of getting to a place now where I'm okay either way, and I can say that actually without crying, which has been maybe like 4 years. I would say that I can say that now without crying because I really do mean it. Even though that hope is still there.
Well, I have to give you some hope here, Jamila, today. So I have a dear friend who was on my board, and she still is kind of just a great person. And she's in her middle age. She is over the 50s. And she, wasn't able to have children either. Tried, same thing, miscarriages. And God has just given them the best surprise. They decided at 50-something years old to go and get some frozen embryos and implanted them in her. And her doctor got her ready, healthy-wise and everything, to be able to carry a child. And she is a mama today at 55.
That is so awesome.
Is that amazing?
That is so awesome.
It's never too late.
I know.
I mean, that's the Sarah story, or was that Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah story. Yeah, she was 90.
90, that's right. She was 90. So it's so neat to see her story. Because, man, that is a testimony of enduring and waiting and being patient and being faithful. Faithful to the desire. And I think that's kind of in a nutshell. And I want to get to kind of what God has done now with your ministry. But, He is faithful to our desires of our heart. And I have to make this a reminder of myself too. Just because my dream seems broken and doesn't mean that that God's going to completely discount it. He creates new dreams for us. So let's talk about your new dream. So in your misery, from misery came a ministry. Is that how it is? From your misery came a ministry. So tell us about how God has restored you with this big purpose in your life.
Well, it's funny because some of my friends call our boxes of encouragement my children, and they're like,
that's so cute.
They're like, you mail out your little children. I know, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
But people are like, oh, it's like you mail out. It's like you create them and you mail out. And He really did birth a ministry in me that I didn't know was there. I've always been a person who, I've actually suffered with depression and things throughout my life. That's a whole nother story. But
we all have,
right? But I've also been a person who's always kind of seen things as the glass is half full. I'm a pretty positive person in general. And so, I've always kind of been an encourager just naturally, but I didn't really realize that it was my spiritual gift until going through, again, this whole infertility battle. And so, when we first started sending out the boxes, again, it was just kind of a little thing I was doing on the side, and I just really found that encouraging other women and what they were going through gave me encouragement because, I would have to study the scriptures and kind of seek deeper understanding into those different things that we all go through in order to provide that encouragement to other women. And so, there's a lot of sometimes people refer to what we do as a subscription box, and it is a monthly subscription, but it's not a typical one where, you're getting cosmetics or shoes or food, which those are all fun. But this is literally a care package of encouragement. And so the idea is that, when you receive it every single month, we have a different theme. And so, this month's theme is flourish. Last month's theme is being brave. And, we've talked about perseverance and holding on to your perspective and
Awesome.
God's faithfulness. And, so the box is just the beginning. And, in it, there's a gift of encouragement that's kind of your reminder for every month. Along with, some stickers and posters and scripture cards and things like that, and a little devotional. And then we have
visual display.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then we have an online community where the ladies actually talk about the topic, and we have a weekly video where we talk more about the topic, and I really encourage women and give tips and ways to stay encouraged and to kind of grow in whatever the topic is. And so for me, it has become something that it does fulfill a dream that I never knew I had. And so, again, I think as I've seen how much God's been able to touch other women through this, I could have never imagined it. I always worried about what my legacy would be if we never had children.
Yeah.
And I feel like He's given me a legacy that I could have never imagined. Through this ministry.
This is cool. I love how you and put in here an encouragement card. Be encouraged, and it's write a note on the enclosed card, mail it to a friend, and hand it to a stranger.
Yeah. Because that's the whole point, right?
Pass it on. Yeah, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
It's not just for them, but
Exactly.
it's now for them to give to somebody else
Exactly.
as well.
Exactly.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is your baby.
Yeah,
These are your
is.
babies. So you do 12 in a year.
Yes.
Once a month.
Yep, we do them once a month.
Okay.
Every month is a different theme, and then we also have a shop on the website that has some of our really popular boxes from past themes. Because a lot of the ladies will get theirs and then they want to go send the whole box to a friend.
Right.
So they'll hold on to theirs and then send another one. Yeah.
So how do people find out about you? How have you been able to build a customer base?
Well, a lot of it has honestly been word of mouth because,
Okay.
Again, I think part of it, it's really a mission of mine to help women be encouraged and then to encourage others around them. So if people visit loved+blessed.com, they can learn more about our monthly membership. And then we also are super excited. It's September. We are having our first in-person gathering.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I can't come.
I know. September's a busy month for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I'm
That's
super excited about it.
great,
To bring what we've been doing online,
Yes.
offline, and really, be able to hug each other in real life and encourage each other.
Yes,
So,
that's so key.
Yeah.
So key. Well, I think we're gonna put we're gonna put your link
Cool.
on our notes.
Awesome.
And so it is a membership,
Yes.
a membership per month, but you get a box, and then you have an online community for just more encouragement. There's so much of those online communities.
Yeah.
I love it. It's just you're not only reaching demographically, but you're reaching, you're reaching
Oh,
the
yeah.
world with this.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we have international ladies from all over the world in there, and there's every age range, every, different life
Good.
situation. It's awesome.
That is so good, and it's just so neat to see. What do you believe? We have like a minute left.
Okay.
Jamila.
Yeah.
So, what would you say has been just your biggest blessing that you can now see because of your broken dream?
Yeah. In all humility, honestly, I have to say that in the 6 years of, since Loved and Blessed started, and letting go of that motherhood idol in my life, the biggest thing that's come out of of my misery has actually been being able to say that we've saved other women's lives. Because we have multiple women that have not committed suicide because their box arrived at just the right time, or it just had the right word, or there was somebody inside of our community who went to go visit them. It's just, exactly. So it's like, that's why I'm like, if I never have children, I'm okay, because I know that He used that to do something that I could have never imagined being able to be a part of.
Wow, Jamila, you are a blessing. Loved and Blessed.
Yeah.
That is it in the word and?
Yes, the website is lovedandblessed.com.
Lovedandblessed.com. Go check Jamila out.
Yeah.
Sign up.
Yeah.
This is awesome to get an encouraging box every month. I just want to thank you so much, Jamila, for coming on our show. It was a blessing to speak with you. Well, everyone, we are up. It is time to go. And I will be here. We actually are going to be in studio again next week. You want to be here next week because guess who I have in the studio? If everybody knows Frank Sanatori that died in a motorcycle accident on KKLA, I'm interviewing his wife. Oh my goodness, Gina Pastori. will be on Revive Podcast in studio next week. So don't miss it. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jamila, for
Thank
coming
you.
out all this way from LA. Everyone, have a wonderful week. And remember that God is a God who restores us in the difficult areas of our life. So be loved and be blessed by Him. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You never see